The ANC stands ready for the NGC. This is not the time to be discussing leadership when we are faced with an existential crisis as a movement.
Where we are as the African National Congress, we need new ideas. We need new direction.
For me, it's policy. Personality doesn't have.
The performance of local government should be at the core of what they discuss.
The ANC's NGC very much in sharp focus. It's topical and it starts right now. Very good evening to you, South African, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical. The African National Congress, readying for its 5th National General Council. The purpose, to assess progress, to strengthen the organization, to refine policies. Having said that, the question then becomes, is the ANC in its current form an effective instrument of the people? Is the party committed to governance? Is the party committed to socio-economic transformation? The ANC says it wants to use the National General Council to ensure that all of this is happening. We will discuss. But I also want to understand the NGC within the broader context of the upcoming local government elections. It takes us to the question of the week, and we're asking you, as the ANC meets to review the party's policies, what outcomes would you like to see emerge from this process? Let us know at SABC News_TV. We are opening up the lines tonight. 011-714-0677-7879, 011-714-0677-7879. Get calling. I'd like to talk to you on air shortly. Let's walk and talk. Get you a sense of what we're looking at. The presidential gala dinner, the ANC presidential gala dinner on your screens currently. The president likely to speak soon. We will monitor that. We will bring you the highlights in a short while. Perspective coming up. All right, let's tee up the discussions for you. SABC News politics journalist Samkela Maseko helping us tonight to break down the importance of this moment. Good to have your better mind on the program, sir. Give us a sense, the 5th ANC National General Council, how important is it for the ANC given the state of play?
It's a very important gathering of the African National Congress, particularly to look and to review the issues pertaining to the ANC when it comes to matters of the elected leadership of the ANC in the 2022 conference. This National General Council, all National General Councils of the ANC cannot change policy, cannot change leadership of the party, but can review decisions made by the highest decision-making body between conferences, which is the National Executive Committee. So ultimately, decisions such as the formation of the government of national unity will come into sharp focus. The constitution of these particular hung councils, where the ANC is in coalition with other political formations, will come under sharp focus within the National General Council. And issues of South Africa's standing and stature within the global community, particularly after hosting a very successful G20 summit, the geopolitics will come into sharp focus when the balance of forces globally are ultimately delivered at plenary and the various commissions that are going to take place. But it is a very important gathering to assess the work and the decisions taken by the highest decision-making body between conferences, that is the National Executive Committee. Right.
Let's talk a bit about the base document and some of the issues that are likely to be discussed. One of the forces resisting transformation. What would be the headline for you post the NGC?
It would be rather interesting, particularly forces resisting transformation. It speaks to broad-based black economic empowerment, the Democratic Alliance wanting to do away with BEE, and particularly noting the hammering South Africa is receiving from the United States of America, the misinformation, the falsehoods, the lies, the fibs being told by United States President Donald Trump on South Africa and the likes of Elon Musk around trying to influence South Africa's transformation policies that are currently there in place, particularly when it comes to outside business coming in to invest into the country, beneficiation that takes place, and the various discussions that took place at the G20 summit, particularly having African countries leveraging on their minerals in order to grow their economies. So it's going to be rather interesting on how they coin, particularly when it comes to the Economic Transformation Subcommittee that will be led by the likes of Zuguko Limpi, the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition, looking at the global balance of forces and current economic performance of the global economy, looking at South Africa's performance as well, and leveraging on those minerals South Africa currently has.
Now, something that has been hammered or underlined by ANC officials in the build-up to the NGC is that we're not talking about leadership. This is not about, this is not an elective conference, so don't be distracted by that. But given your experience and the talks around it, to what extent is an NGC used to test popularity, to test sway going into the elective conference?
Historically, within the African National Congress, after former President Nelson Mandela passed on the baton to former President Mbeki, the fives in the ANC have always been the start of the problems. When I speak about the fives, I speak about the 2005 NGC going towards the 2007 Polokwane Conference. I speak about the 2015 NGC going towards the 2017 elective conference of the African National Congress. This NGC currently taking place now in 2025 is actually going to be the start of the problems of the incumbent president of the African National Congress. He may have a strong hold on the ANC, but there will be those in the corners who are murmuring, saying that give it to Paul Mashatile, give it to Fikile Mbalula, give it to Togo Didiza, give it to Dr. Patrice Motsepe, and the number of names that have been branded about. Particularly, it comes at a time when the Federation, Congress of South African Trade Unions, COSATU, is bleeding members. Particularly, COSATU is a shadow of its former self. If anyone speaks about the left axis within the country now, they are speaking about a pipe dream. They are speaking about an elephant that has been eaten to the ground, that can no longer stand up. COSATU is literally crawling, if it's not yet buried. So it comes at a time where there needs to be new alliances that are formed. And with what is currently happening with the cracks in the ANC, the cracks within the South African Communist Party, political parties that have also faced their own issues, such as the Economic Freedom Fighters, the formation of Maibuye Africa, it will look at a broader consultation of whether you bring back all of these splinter parties that have broken away from the ANC to have a consultative conference, which was once proposed by the national chairperson of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe, in order to avoid the fragmentation of the so-called progressive vote. But this NGC will ultimately lead to a number of caucuses starting from last night, tonight, and throughout the course of the week that are going to be taking place in discussions going towards the ANC's 2027 conference. You can't avoid the leadership debate.
Right. And the renewal agenda is very much topical, right? How important is this NGC in the context of the local government elections?
Just the mere fact of these three individuals, these three faces, they are ultimately what has led to the demise of the African National Congress. His battle with Jacob Zuma, you saw the formation of COPE, the support went away. His battle with Julius Malema, EFF was formed. His battle with Jacob Zuma, MK was formed. So ultimately, it is going to be rather interesting when they speak about renewal, because the renewal issue of the ANC, if you go to the 1998 Mahikeng Conference of the African National Congress, where former President Nelson Mandela handed over the baton to former President Mbeki, the issues of monies creeping in to run the African National Congress go as far back as that political report that was delivered by former President Nelson Mandela. In successive ANC conferences and national general councils, you've had the very same issue being touted about by the ANC presidents. You go as far back as the 2017 conference, the diagnostic report of then ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe. It speaks to the very essence of renewal of the party. But has the party renewed itself? No. It has not renewed itself because ANC leaders are still fighting amongst themselves for the state largesse, as opposed to going back to reorganizing their party in order to try and renew it. Some leaders of the African National Congress clearly say the ANC, for it to renew itself, it needs an organizational redesign.
We'll test that and see what does that mean in terms of the context of this NGC with the national spokesperson coming up shortly. Samkele Maseko, thank you, sir.
Thank you,
As
brother.
always, he's better man, Samkele Maseko, giving us the context around the NGC. I want to get your thoughts now. Our Word on the Street feature took to various streets seeking diverse insights and perspectives on this topic, and this is what you had to say.
As we are heading to the local government elections next year, the performance of local government should be at the core of what they discuss.
We also have a high rate of matters that are going through in this country that are not even solved. Hopefully, during these ANC meetings and stuff, we just hoping that the leadership maybe can divert their focus, look into building something stronger for the country.
For me, it's policy. Personality doesn't help, because putting somebody there who doesn't know how to do their job, it's useless. It's taking us back. So we need something, that has to do with policy in order to ensure that whatever's in the policy is being enforced.
For me, I feel like number one should be crime, actually. Because I feel like the country right now is dealing with a lot of crime, understand? Like, every day cases are being reported and everything. Especially now, like, I feel like the festive season is a good example of what's happening in terms of crime. A lot of crime is being reported right now. So I feel like the number one big issue for me that the ANC should be actually focusing on is crime.
I would say addressing people's cries. I would say things that people are complaining about. I think that's something that they really have to focus on, because ANC most of the time in other political parties, it's usually all about them. They don't really focus on us and all that. But I hope that starting from that conference and so on, that they listen to our cries, our problems, and they try to find a way to resolve those things.
They need to discuss investing more on hiring educators, because I think that issue has been neglected for so long. As a result, we end up having schools which hire people who are not qualified enough to be educators.
Right, we do appreciate your thoughts on this matter. Let's get to it and give us a call. 011-714-0677-7879. That's the number to dial. We'll take your calls live on air. We'll pepper the show throughout. Get your opinion on the matters at hand. Professor Sipho Seepe is joining us live. Thank you, sir, for your time. Political analyst, Professor Sipho Seepe. We also have ANC National Spokesperson Mahlengi Bhengu joining us virtually, as well as Professor Joleen Steyn-Kotze, Chief Research Specialist, Human Science Research Council. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Mahlengi, if I can maybe start with you. Look, of course, there's going to be a variety of issues. We spoke about the base document in terms of the discussions, but in the lead up to the NGC, what would you say will dominate conversations at this important council?
Thank you, Blaine. I would start off by saying that it's all of those vexing questions that are facing the nation, as well as those that are facing the ANC internally. But in terms of matters that are facing our country, we are going to be looking at local government. How do we refashion local government? Already there is a discussion in government about a new funding model for local government. We are going to talk about how do we fix government so that local government is in a position to meet the basic needs of our people, and that we get competent, capable, ethical administrators as well as councillors. So the whole idea of fixing local government is going to dominate without a doubt. The whole issue of service delivery is going to dominate without a doubt. We're also going to look at the the state of the economy, and whether we have key drivers that promote not just economic transformation, but inclusive economic growth. So the current plan that has been put out by the ANC, NEC in recent weeks will be examined by the National General Council. Those are just some of the issues. We're also going to look at governance in a lot of detail, the state of governance in South Africa. A look at the operations and the performance of the Government of National Unity and our role in it. So those are just some of the, I could go on and on, but those are some of the key highlights. Then, of course, the fight against crime and corruption is going to be a big area of focus, given all the work that's being done, whether it's in the SIU environment, in the past 3 years. The SIU has had to deal with so many, over 200 or so presidential proclamations, which goes to show that the fight against corruption is really gaining momentum. The stuff that's coming out of the Mahlengi Commission will be also examined, although we are not doing a running commentary on the work of the Commission until a report is presented.
The state of our judiciary, our justice system, very much topical and on the lips of many, so that no doubt will dominate the state of the economy. What about the state of your party going into this NGC? How would you describe it?
Well, for the mere fact, Blaine, that it would be something that hasn't happened in a long time, that we go to this National General Council that starts tomorrow, having had branch meetings across the country, VD by VD, where the ANC has presence, local presence, and that the delegates that are coming here have discussed the base document in their own branch, have been given a mandate by their own branches, and the fact that we've had provincial general councils across the country to look at a consolidated provincial input into the NGC, I think bodes well for the quality of discussion that is expected to take place and the robustness of the discussion that is expected to take place, to look at all of those matters that are in the base document.
On the 30th of November, Mahlengi, you responded to a story about plots to remove the ANC president. You called it misleading and destructive reporting. You also said that the focus now is advancing this renewal agenda and fostering unity. How would the renewal agenda manifest itself, do you think, during this NGC?
Well, we will have to get as part of the midterm reporting that will be done by the Secretary General on behalf of the NEC. Will go to great lengths to speak about matters related to where is or what is the state of the renewal program of the ANC. And of course, there's a lot of detail that is provided in that report about what was committed to in the resolution that was taking place at the 55th National Conference and what has been done to date and what else needs to be done going forward, taking us into the year 2027. I can say that there is absolute commitment to discussing the state of our renewal program and the rebuilding work that you see happening across the various provinces to rebuild the ANC, in spite and despite a number of challenges that we face. But in terms of the leadership discussion, I had Samkelo opining that it is unavoidable. There will be no discussion on succession at this NGC. That is the mandate we are taking to the NGC coming from the National Executive Committee. There will be no such a focus on that discussion because it is not yet the time to focus on that. And the agenda is structured in such a way that that is not going to happen. In fact, even provinces have said that that is not something that is at issue. So whatever mutterings were there and allegations of a plot to recall the president during this National General Council, I'm really willing to say that such a thing is not going to happen. Our members and our leaders have frowned upon any attempt by those that operate in dark corners to try and convert this NGC into what it is not.
Professor Seepe, officially it won't be on the agenda. in terms of the succession talk that we've been hearing about over the past couple of weeks. But is it unavoidable from your sense? And how crucial would it be to have that discussion within this structure?
If we are going to talk about a review of progress, which is what the NGC is all about, that since the last Congress, you need to review how the party has performed. So there should be no-go areas. But I can understand from the perspective of leadership, if I was in the leadership, I'll also make sure that that discussion does not see light of day. And what we've seen is the ANC's successful, at least for now, management of making sure that this does not become an issue to be discussed. But if you are going to talk about a review, you need to have to ask whether you have the right leadership.
Right.
You can talk about policy, but you should also ask whether, if I have this bus, whether I have the right driver. And if the driver is not okay, is not the right one, then you remove that. But what we're dealing with here is the management of that process. But also the review, and it's not only about the review, it's also about the challenges that you are facing.
Right.
Are those challenges of leadership as well? And of course, there are other challenges that have come in as a result of the ANC's poor performance in the last election.
Yes.
You have to ask. And one of the persons who had been vocal about it in recent weeks has been Thabo Mbeki. I just listened to a clip by Balula, says when we have no time to talk about the leadership, when we're faced with an existential crisis. So one needs to ask, what do we mean by that existential crisis? And Thabo Mbeki had said, when you have a party that loses 17% of the share of a vote, then you should know that you do have a crisis.
Right.
And that crisis must be looked at. Then the second issue that needs to be looked at is whether the agreements or the maneuvers, tactics that the ANC has actually taken since it lost that a large number of votes that it used to control, whether those tactical moves are the correct ones. And we've seen within the ANC some people grumbling. I mean, if you take the position of the SACP vis-a-vis the GNU, they are not convinced that partnering with the DA was an answer, especially when you have a partner that says, our objective is not to nest the ANC. We're not there to protect anything, but to destroy the ANC. Right. Helen Zille has said many times that the National Party is gone, and I will see to it that during my lifetime, this party is gone. And that has raised some questions. And of course, Helen Zille has been consistent that every legislative measure and the executive program that ANC has come up with, they've tried to say we're not going to support it. So the Congress or this meeting must address that, whether that partnership is a partnership that will make the NGC succeed. Because one of the things it says they want to turn the ANC into an effective instrument to achieve the vision of the Freedom Charter, and that is the people shall govern. The ANC used to be a leader of government, and used to not leader of society. Right now, that is contested. The ANC talks about also the vision of the Freedom Charter being about the wealth of the people shall be shared. You know, and when you talk about the wealth of the country being shared by the people, the question is, what do you do with this grotesque inequalities? What do you do with these triple challenges? The issue of crime, poverty, the widening gap. Those are the issues that the ANC must actually grapple with, to say, if we are going to reclaim the centrality of our movement being an effective instrument in the hands of the people, we cannot ignore this. Plus, many other parties that have come in.
Sure. Professor Steyn-Kotze, the term existential crisis, it's not a new one. We've heard it before. I was going through this year's January 8th statement talking about decisive and visible action, was the president of the ANC, saying that the 2024 election results confirmed that they face an existential crisis and that this is the moment wherein the ANC should either renew or perish. Over the past year, since that was said, have you seen material change within the party from a person from outside looking in?
You know, I think it's for me always quite fascinating when we start focusing on terms such as the existential crisis within political parties or one political party, but we need to have that conversation within what I think is the broader context of what is happening within the public imagination. We know, of course, the 2024 general elections, we saw the lowest level of voter turnout within South Africa's democratic history. We also know that when we look at some of the public opinion research published out there, that this public distrust or lack of confidence, if you will, is not something that is uniquely focused on the African National Congress, for example, but also within other political parties. So I think for me, the question is actually a little bit more broader in terms of if we are talking about an existential crisis, I would take it a step further and say, what are the lessons we have learned about electoral democracy?
Right.
And what are some of the measures political parties can take to start restoring that level of faith in electoral processes and in the workings of a democratic system?
Right. Mahlengi, what sort of lessons have you learned? What can the ANC do differently in the 31st year of democracy that it hasn't done or tried in the last 30 years?
Well, you know, just talking about improving the overall state of health of the organization, looking at reconnecting with what we call with our motive forces in the ANC lexicon, our base, the people that have always resonated with the message of the ANC, focusing on their needs, focusing on making sure that the grinding poverty and inequality, we take decisive steps to tackle that. Some of the transformation laws that unfortunately have been taken to court, in and out of the courts by the Democratic Alliance, such as the Expropriation Act, are some of those interventions that are aimed at addressing, for example, access to the land for developmental purposes and for the purposes of addressing this grinding inequality. And so that is just but one example that I will use. What else are we doing to deal with the existential crisis? Because we call it an existential crisis precisely because the ANC, if it does not renew, it will die. If it doesn't renew, it will die. We've said this ourselves. And so that is an existential crisis that we're faced with. So the reconnecting with our base, where we govern, be visible among our people, deliver services working with our people, and deliver services with utmost competence and honesty and humility. In other words, we shouldn't be, the things of a councillor that has been found to have done some wrongdoing by the community should be a thing of the past, and consequencing the wrong actions must be a priority as part of the renewal agenda. Political and ideological development of our members as the ANC gets younger and younger, and many of the young people would require that they are steeped in the theory of the ANC, in the language of the ANC, in order to be able to do that which they're supposed to do. So we've done a lot of great work in the space of political education. We have strengthened the OR Tambo School of Leadership, which is now moving to offer programs at an advanced level, including at a postgraduate level, looking to formalize some of our programs, and the work we're doing in the continent in the area of fostering solidarity in the continent, in the global south, and in the trade space. Part of the renewal of society and the work of government is to broaden our trade landscape, look for alternative markets, and ensure that we tackle the challenges of a slow economy that is slow to grow. Although in the recent week or two, we've started seeing some indications that there's some movement in an upward trajectory.
Right.
We need to be very methodical about it and consistent about it, because indeed it is possible to turn around the economy, but it will require a proper plan that is well thought through. And we're selling and we're providing the economic plan that was adopted not so long ago as a part solution to turning the economy around and accelerating those things that we've committed ourselves to, as opposed to starting. The policies are set, are in place, but the stubborn challenges toward that are hindering economic growth are some of those things that we need to tackle, including some of the existing legislations.
Something interesting that you picked up on in terms of ideology and policy. I just want to tell our viewers that we are monitoring what's happening at the ANC presidential gala dinner that's happening on the eve of the NGC. That's what you are seeing on the side, left-hand side of your screen. These are live visuals. President, I'm told, is ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa will be walking in shortly. We'll keep tabs on that. Speaking, Professor Seepe, on ideology policy, I wonder, in terms of the current electorate and the trajectory and the trends, do people buy off quicker, or firstly, on personality rather than ideology and policies? Or is it the other way around?
Well, what we know now is that the people are no longer going to buy the story that says we are thinking about you. They are saying until there's a material change in their lives, they are going to change the vote. They have given the ANC a lot of chance, and what we saw in the last election is to say you no longer own our vote, and especially largely from the African community. So that's the first thing that has come. What has also emerged after even the G20 jamboree is that the ANC has been part of a number of by-elections. Yes. And if you look at the trend, the people remain unimpressed by that. So what the ANC needs to do is to say, what is it that we can do right now? And the point is that it doesn't seem to be possible until the next election to start having people who have been incompetent to suddenly become competent. The president of the ANC himself had said, when you look at municipalities that are performing, he says those are largely not within the ANC, although later he had to correct himself to say, I meant not only in terms of financial audits and all that, I also mean transformation. But the message was not lost to the opposition that decided to milk that out. And you also have somebody like Thabo Mbeki, who has also been vocal to say two things. One, he says you have a crisis, you must acknowledge it. Right. And secondly, the people want to see that all people will be equal before the law. Right. And the EFF has raised the issue of Phala-Phala again. And people are very much aware that the issue of Phala-Phala, there is a report that is very clear. And if you listen to Batoi, the National Director of Public Prosecution, the interviews that she has held, she has come so poorly that it would appear that the decisions that she should have taken, they was not been taken. Right. And people are questioning whether this is one of those. But we also have the issue of how do you broaden the notion of existential crisis? Yes. Because it's not only within the party, but it's also outside the party. Right. The fact that the people no longer believe in our democracy, some people are saying they might even be open to a form of dictatorship, which is something very dangerous. Yeah. So we need to be very aware of that. The judiciary itself is also part of the problem. Right. The Justice Maya had actually said, if you look at the surveys, they indicate that there is a crisis. But this is not within the purview of the ANC. But what is most important is that the ANC at the moment is at its lowest. And Fikile Mbalula is actually correct when he says we are faced with the existential crisis within the party. Right. And that one hopes that acknowledging that they may be able to say these are the things that we can do in the near future to be able to restore the idea of democracy as an important instrument. But for now, people are saying this democracy is not working for us.
Live visuals on your screen with regards to the president of the ANC. They're currently singing the national anthem. We will come back to that in a short while. I just want to bring in Professor Joleen Steyn-Kotze regarding where the ANC is, and something that Mahlengi and the other ANC officials possibly needs to consider is, has the party reached an inflection point whereby the shine of this powerful liberation movement is slowly fading away from the memories of especially the older voters, or is that too powerful of a factor to ever diminish in the psyche of this country?
You know, it's always interesting because I'm going to cast my lens a little bit wider. You know, if we consider that South Africa is not the only country that has had a revolutionary movement come in terms as a liberation party, if you will, take the reins of government. We have seen it across the African continent, across the Latin American context as well. And what history has taught us is that at some point in time, liberation parties, for lack of a better phrase, tends to not, I would say, lose broader support, but the questions of governance, of power, of delivery, of almost, I would say, transversing from a liberation context into a governance context, into a you know, societal transformation context. There are certain challenges that comes with the territory, so to speak. So some of the challenges I believe that we see now the ANC facing, I won't say they are new problems within democratic scholarship, if you will. There are numerous examples. Off the bat, I'm thinking of Mexico, for example, where after 70 years within power, the governing party had to let go of the reins of power. I think what is unique in the South African case, however, is this emergence that we saw of governments of national unity, that we call it a local, at a national government level, but at a local level, we refer to it as a coalition government or coalition politics. And for me, I think that's the crux of the message that we are getting from those voters who are still going out to the polls to vote, is that, you know, the politics of confrontation, the antagonistic politics that has characterized our political system, it's almost like there is this want for more of a politics of collaboration to work together, that we can start addressing those wicked problems that we are very well aware of. And that would be racialized patterns of poverty and inequality that still continue as we stand at the cusp of 31 years of democracy, levels of unemployment. I had a little laugh about the problems of the fives a little earlier on. And it dawned on me that it is also 5 years since the COVID pandemic, you know, as we were going through it. So we are in a, I think, very, very interesting time. But I also think at the same time, political parties need to be open to the possibility of having to do things unusually in a different way. You know, I think it was Thabo Mbeki who said that it cannot be business as usual. Right. It needs to be a business unusual.
Doing things in an unusual way, Mahlengi, Bhengu, how does that sit with you?
That really lands quite strongly. But also just thought that Professor Kotze has hit it in terms of the challenges that we need to look out for and address. I really can't take anything away from that particular intervention, because all of the things that are being said. For example, the spirit of collaboration in this, among parties in the South Africa's political system. Of course, we are seeing that happening already with a number of pressure points, because there is still a great deal of scholarship that needs to be developed in the South African context about coalition politics. And we're nowhere near mastering, if you like, the craft or the art of managing coalitions.
Right.
Both coalitions have not worked as well as they needed to in our country. But we need to obviously gather much more information, much more research work in that direction, but also just practical lived daily struggles of local government where there's coalitions as well as in provinces. So I really think that that's an important point. I also do think that the matter of the electoral system, you would know that the ANC made a comprehensive submission when the IEC opened up for discussions on a number of things, including matters of electronic voting, but even more other substantive matters. So we have put our positions known in terms of whether there must be some profound changes to the current electoral system as it stands. I do want to take an issue, though, with Professor Seepe suggesting that G20 was a jamboree. I'm not certain that I understood, if I did understand him correctly, the context in which he used this word. I think it was a G20 summit that is going to produce several outcomes, including those that are going to directly, if properly implemented, benefit the poorest of the poor. You can speak about the bilaterals related to access to education and also strengthening the new early childhood development that is now been formalized into the education system. We can talk about trade, we can talk about a whole host of issues around diseases and control, and the collaboration that should be taken, that is taking place among the BRICS countries, amongst countries in the continent. But also not just that, I think the idea of international solidarity with those that share common values, with those that share a common strive to end poverty and to build a just world where there's peace and stability is an important thing that nations must gather to find lasting solutions to a world that is a better place and is a world that is free of poverty. And those are the things that elements in the G20 could be found looking at matters of poverty and inequality. I don't think that we should be reductionist about interventions that come with hosting the G20, apart from the fact that it has positioned South Africa interestingly. And I think the jury is still out, of course, as to how the spin-offs of hosting the G20 are going to accrue to South Africa and to the neighbors of South Africa.
I want to get Professor Sipho Seepe's take on also clarity with regards to what you were speaking about, but also something that was an extension of the G20 and I guess underlined this relationship of, some might call it hostility or animus between the United States and South Africa, and how this is likely to play out in terms of conversations that are being had in the NGC. We'll come back in a short while. 011-714-0677-7879. That's the number to dial. We need to take a quick break. We're also monitoring what's happening at the ANC Presidential Gala dinner. If the president of the ANC does speak, we will try to bring that to you live as well. Quick break, more next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. I just want to remind you about the question of the week. And we ask you, as the ANC meets to review the party's policies, what outcomes would you like to see emerge from this process? Let us know at SABC News_TV. We're also opening up the lines 011-714-0677-7879. Just before we went to break, we were having a conversation around G20 and whether the G20 was a jamboree. Professor Sipho Seepe, your clarity on the issue.
Well, the G20 came up with a declaration, and that declaration does not bind anybody if they fail. It's simply an expression of goodwill. But we have a very important document, the document called the Constitution, that we have control over. We have control of that document. We don't have as much control on the declarations that we make and are made at G20s. But we had failed in this country, despite a document that we have control over, the Constitution, to deliver that sense of equality that we talk about at the international level. We have failed to build that solidarity that we talk about. If you talk about the issues of inequalities that are grotesque, you're talking about the poverty levels in this country among the white people in terms of research is that it's 1%. Among African people is 64%, which has made this country, despite the best constitution that we have control over, to be able to say these are the promises that we have made in 1994. This is what we have signed for. So if we cannot even use our own base document that we say is the best in the world to make some changes, how do you actually use the document that has so many players and so many dependencies and think you can turn that around? We've had, for instance, a lot of investment conferences where there were pledges, I mean trillions, and those people who made those pledges, some of them disappear as soon as this has gone. So it is in that context. And I'm simply saying we need to be able to focus on that which we can control. And at this point in time, despite the ANC having been in power for a long time, South Africa has earned the dubious title of being a poster child of global inequality. The racial patterns, even of ownership. I mean, the ANC is very good even in articulating some of these problems. So we are saying, if the ANC want the people to bet on it, they must say, how do we use this very document that we have control over to make sure that it affects those, but they're having dependencies. Yes, it's good to have people who are going to say, we are with you, but those people can simply choose to say, we move away. For instance, take the issue of transition, just energy transition. You have countries that have pledged, but some of them are not throwing the money. We are talking about concessions and all, but those are good things. But let's try to control that which is within our control. Rather than
I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that. I just want to go to the lines. We understand that we have Kustas from the Northern Cape calling us. Kustas, a very good evening to you. Your question?
Hi, Blaine. Thank you very much for taking my call. Blaine, I am listening to your guest today, but especially Mahlengi Bhengu. But before I start, I want to give my condolences to the family of Witness D this evening on the eve of the NGC. Yazi, Blaine, when I listen to Sis Mahlengi and then she repeats this renewal, this and that and that and what, you know, all I see are empty words because Witness D is dead today. And it's not that South Africa has no money, but the current president over the past few years has decreased the budget of the police by 11%, according to Senzo Mchunu. So my question to her is this. After this NGC, what would change for South Africans because we are unsafe and we are not seeing any change of course from the African National Congress by putting in resources to the police, to the army, and it's going downhill. We have heard them talk, and they just think good to talk, but what are they going to offer?
Kustas, I think Mahlengi has noted that. I want to take another call if we can. Lungile from Johannesburg, not yet on the line. Okay, we'll go back to Lungile. Mahlengi, your response?
Well, again, I think it is important to acknowledge what Kustas is raising. I certainly can't, I would be lying away to say that the NGC will come up with will provide an outcome whose impact will be felt immediately. The NGC is coming to do a review of the midterm performance of the ANC. What it must do, though, is to pay particular attention, and through the relevant commissions that are going to be taking place, to the transformation of the criminal justice system in our country, and take the recent examples, such as the one of Witness D, Mr. van der Merwe, such as the many other people that have been arrested on charges of corruption, some of those that have been suspended in the Ekurhuleni Metropolitan Municipality. The NGC will have to ask itself hard questions about the role of our deployees in those spaces where these things happened, where we were in government. We have to do that kind of self-reflection and self-criticism. But I do want to assure Kustas that renewal is just not slogans. When we come out of the NGC, we will come back to society to itemize those things that have been produced by the Renewal program, and to also pay particular attention to the state of local government, because all of the things that you are raising have a lot to do with meeting the basic needs of our people as enshrined in the Reconstruction and Development program. And the litmus test of any gathering or any words that are uttered by any ANC leader, including ourselves, is practical actions, visible actions to shift, to improve, to bring water, to ensure that we've got safe and clean towns and cities, to ensure that with the extortions that we have, communities work with us to get rid of the mafias, whether in the Zama environment or whether those that come and steal Jojo tanks. All of that requires a partnership with society. The ANC was never designed to work alone. If you look at our historic documents, it always says with the people, with the people.
Right. I want to try and squeeze in a few more calls. We are getting now Sicelo from the capital, Pretoria. Sicelo, a very good evening to you. Your question?
Good evening, Ben. Good to be back on the show. I think it's just a comment really to say that, part of the problem the African National Congress faces is really transitioning from being this revolutionary party that had a very big role in achieving freedom in '94 to being a real governing party. I think personally there's a big struggle in transitioning there, and I think there needs to be more effort into taking the South Africans into confidence. I mean, these are things that we've heard. South Africa heard that the ANC is going to do this and going to do that. I think we need a more tangible plan of action. I've always said that part of the issue is that we don't have key performance aids. We have to put in plans, budgets, and things like that. And this is why I like the deputy ministers of PI, Zugo Hindi's comment to say part of the thing is that ANC structures should be in the know of what is happening in their communities, and simply they are not. I mean, how many branches can say that we know how many schools there are in our branches, how many students there are in the schools, how many books, how many tables, how many chairs, how many doctors are in our clinics and things like that. I think that's a very big part of the turnaround strategy that the ANC needs to employ, and that's my comment on that.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to get final thoughts now. Mahlengi?
Thank you very much. Hopefully you'll allow me to exit after the final thoughts, given the other matters that one is attending to. I think that the comment by the Stelo is really well noted. Tangible plan of action, tangible things. And I think it builds on the point I made earlier. But I think that it was much more elegant than I could have put it. And I think this thing, when you talk about the ANC reconnecting with communities, is aimed at ensuring exactly that. That if you live in a particular ward, you need to have a ward profile. You need to have a sense of what the state of healthcare is there. You need to have a sense of the schooling system there and all of that. And so those are the things that you are patiently working on. Whether there will be time or not time to sufficiently implement them, I suppose the jury's out, but there is a strong commitment by the ANC to South Africans to ensure that we turn around the ANC and to ensure that that transition from becoming a strictly non-state ruling revolutionary organization into a governing party is something that indeed presents challenges, but there is a lot of body of opinion where this has been done and been done successfully.
Mahlengi Bhengu, ANC's spokesperson, thank you very much indeed. We'll release you. Appreciate your thoughts. Professor Steyn-Kotze, we've got 30 seconds. What should be the headline when the NGC is closed?
I think public imagination and almost rekindling interest of the public is going to be of critical importance. And in a nutshell, we asked questions around what worked in South Africa over the last 30 years and what hasn't. Yep. What has worked is that we got freedom. What hasn't worked is corruption.
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Prof. Prof. Seepe, I've got 10 seconds. Your thoughts?
Well, the review must be total. It must also include whether you have the right bus driver and whether you have the right bus. But what is most important is to know that all these things that the ANC says must be done. It has been saying that for a number of years. And the so-called new rules, regulations and all that, those exist. What we lack is understanding that when you have people who are bought, prepaid leaders, starting from the president to a person on the branch, then you can never address people's challenges. And that is where the issue of the RDP of the soul that Thabo Mbeki and Mandela spoke about is actually missing.
Professor Seepe, thank you so much indeed. Professor Steyn-Kotze, thank you as well for your time. Appreciate your thoughts on this matter. No doubt we'll be talking a bit more about this as the days unfold, the NGC starting tomorrow. Be sure to keep it locked onto SABC News, so we'll have the very latest and the analysis of the importance of this. But before we go, here's my take. And let me just broaden the topic a bit with this question. In the run-up to the local government elections, what moves the needle for you? What are the issues that make you want to get up on your feet and stand in that line and vote? There's a saying in political science: democracy is not a system of majority rule, it is a system of minority rule with majority acquiesce. Which basically means people tend to have preferences on certain issues, but they don't feel strongly enough to do something about them. And on the flip side, you have a small group of people who care very deeply about certain issues, and they tend to be more vocal. It is one thing to be on the right side of an issue. It is another to actually do something about it. Again, what are the policies, the circumstance, the concerns that moves the needle for you and that will make you want to vote? I'll leave that question with you. And that's my take. If you miss anything on this program, then be sure to watch this episode of It's Topical on YouTube, as well as SABC Plus and Rap Africa up next. If you're watching a repeat of this program, then as always, the news continues. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.